From a beloved hip-hop innovator to one of the greatest vocalists of all time, here are some of the deaths that have hit the music industry the hardest so far in 2023. While the legendary outfit Earth, Wind & Fire could be categorized most accurately as an R&B group, their sound has always defied labels, as they also had funk and disco elements as well. Though co-lead vocalists Maurice White and Philip Bailey tended to steal the spotlight, the entire band was legendarily tight. And that all began with the rhythm section, including Fred White on drums. According to the New York Times, White and his brother Verlaine played on the vast bulk of Earth, Wind & Fire's most recognizable tunes. Unfortunately, Fred passed away at the age of 67 on January 1st. In his memoir, My Life with Earth, Wind & Fire, Maurice White, the half-brother of Verlaine and Fred, praised Fred, saying, "A brick wall with a rock-solid tempo and a rock-solid feel." 3 6 Mafia are bona fide hip-hop legends. Their legendary run from 1998 to 2006 saw them release 2 gold and 2 platinum albums. At the tail end of it, they even scored an Oscar for contributing the stone-cold classic It's Hard Out There for a Pimp to the 2005 drama Hustle and Flow. While they haven't released a proper album since 2008's Last Walk, their impact on rap music and pop culture in general has been indelible, which made it particularly shocking when Lola Gangsta Boo Mitchell, who joined the group in 1995 and carved out a successful solo career in the late 90s and early aughts, passed away unexpectedly on New Year's Day from an accidental overdose. According to NPR, Gangsta Boo was a sought-after vocalist, having appeared on tracks by such luminaries as Outkast, Eminem, and E40. At the time of her death on January 1st, she had just completed a video for I'm a Mac, a Drumma Boy track featuring a guest spot by Gangsta Boo. Gangsta Boo was only 43 years old. Scottish band The Associates isn't necessarily a household name in the United States, but the group was among the most important groups to rise from the United Kingdom's post-punk scene in the 80s. The duo of vocalist Billy Mackenzie and guitarist-keyboardist Alan Rankine were far more influential than their relatively slight discography and cult status might suggest. Just as the uber-talented Icelandic singer Björk, who told NME in 2018 that The Associates' 1982 sophomore effort Sulk was her choice for the album everyone should hear before they die. The Associates boasted a similarly heavy influence on a slew of post-punk and new wave bands of the 80s, and according to the BBC, there was an outpouring of tributes when Rankine passed away on January 3rd at the age of 64. In addition to his work with the Associates, Rankine established Electric Honey Records, a student-run label at Glasgow Kelvin College, where he was a professor. In 1996, the label dropped Tiger Milk, the debut release from the critically acclaimed indie pop outfit Belle and Sebastian. The legendary 60s rock group The Yardbirds produced more insanely talented guitarists than any one band has a reasonable right to. Jimmy Page, who would later set the world on fire with Led Zeppelin, Eric Clapton, who would front supergroup Cream before going on to a stellar solo career, and Jeff Beck, square peg who never found a round hole he couldn't fit into. Beck's time in bands may very well have been short simply because his innovations were too much for his bandmates to keep up with. He was a pioneer of jazz rock fusion, doing things with distortion and fuzz boxes that none of his peers at the time were doing. His work earned him acclaim. He was an 8-time Grammy winner and double inductee into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, both as a solo artist and as a member of the Yardbirds. Beck passed away on January 10th from bacterial meningitis. Among those to pay tribute was his former bandmate Page. On Twitter, Page wrote, "The six-stringed warrior is no longer here for us to admire the spell he could weave around our mortal emotions. Jeff could channel music from the ethereal." And Kiss frontman Gene Simmons told the BBC,
"Jazz, in fusion, in rock, blues, he could do it all."
When you're the daughter of the king of rock and roll, your life is bound to be an interesting and publicly lived one. This was certainly true for Lisa Marie Presley, who was born into music royalty, became an heir to her father's vast estate after his 1977 death when she was only 9 years old, and even took an unsuccessful crack at keeping her royal lineage going with a brief marriage to King of Pop Michael Jackson between 1994 and 1995. She may have been more well known for being constantly scrutinized by the tabloids and for her charitable endeavors, but she also inherited her father's love of music and was a pretty talented artist in her own right. Presley released 3 albums during the course of her career: 2003's To Whom It May Concern, 2005's Now What, and 2012's Storm and Grace, with the former 2 having notched spots in the Billboard Top 10. Unfortunately, Presley's final years were marred by tragedy. Her son Benjamin Keough, from her pre-Michael Jackson marriage to musician Danny Keough, died by suicide at the age of 27 in 2020. Then, in January 2023, Presley went into cardiac arrest at her home and was rushed to the hospital, but she was unable to pull through. She died the evening of January 12th at the age of 54. According to CBS News, her final resting place is at her father's iconic Graceland estate next to her son. Bachman-Turner Overdrive was a Canadian band that had a pretty stellar run in the 70s. Formed by former Guess Who guitarist Randy Bachman, the outfit made a splash with its 1973 sophomore effort Bachman-Turner Overdrive 2 and its driving single Taking Care of Business. They went on to produce an even bigger one with 1974's #1 hit single You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet. Randy left the group in 1977, but it carried on without him, with no name change as it had another Bachman in stock, Randy's brother Robbie Bachman on drums. Unfortunately, there will be no getting the band back together. On January 12th, Robbie Bachman passed away at the age of 69 from undisclosed causes. Randy Bachman took to Twitter to mourn his brother, saying, "He was an integral cog in our rock and roll machine, and we rocked the world together." Many professional musicians live colorful lives, but David Crosby's was perhaps a bit more colorful than most. A folk rock pioneer, Crosby has been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice, as a member of Crosby, Stills and Nash and as a member of the Byrds, both iconic groups that made enormous contributions to popular music in the 60s and 70s. Crosby remained committed to performing for decades, even as his recording career wound down due to his struggles with addiction and health problems. Throughout it all, his voice remained strong, as did his opinions on music, politics, and life in general. In his final interview with Rolling Stone, published in February 2023, Crosby confessed to being puzzled as to how he had managed to outlive so many of his peers.
Do you ever wonder why you are still alive?
I don't know. No idea, man.
He also offered some gems of wisdom in response to readers' questions. Queried as to how the peace and love generation went wrong, he responded, "Well, I've asked myself the same thing. I'm an idealist. We are trying to evolve as human beings to the point where we don't have ego and anger and greed and lust running our affairs. I don't know if we're going to make it. I believe that we will." Crosby passed away on January 18th at the age of 81. The Screaming Trees was formed in 1984 by brothers Gary Lee Conner and Van Conner on guitar and bass, respectively, vocalist Mark Lanigan and drummer Mark Pickerel. They released their first album in 1986, and in 1991 the band signed to Epic Records and released their breakthrough album Uncle Anesthesia, co-produced by Soundgarden's Chris Cornell. This, of course, is the year that Nirvana's Nevermind exploded across the pop culture landscape, but while peers such as Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, and Alice in Chains rode the grunge wave to success and acclaim, the Screaming Trees fielded just one major hit and Nearly Lost You. Still, the Trees' unique, almost grunge sound and commitment to their craft earned them the admiration of their more successful peers. Sadly, on January 17th, Van Conner died at the age of 55 after a protracted illness. While New York band Television only recorded 2 albums during their 70s heyday, 1977's Marquee Moon and 1978's Adventure, the band had an outsized influence on their peers, exerting a heavy influence on such future megastars as R.E.M., Red Hot Chili Peppers, and U2. And a key piece of its musical puzzle was guitarist and singer Tom Verlaine. Verlaine's experimental guitar work, unique vocal delivery, and clever lyrics earned the praise of critics and peers alike, but they never found mainstream success. In a 2006 New York Times interview, when asked to sum up how a biographer would present his life, Verlaine replied, "Struggling not to have a professional career." Television reunited for just one additional album, a self-titled 1991 effort, but they continued to thrill fans with sporadic live performances into the aughts and teens. After a battle with prostate cancer, Verlaine passed away on January 28th at the age of 73. Burt Bacharach was one of the most important pop music composers of the late 20th century, giving us some of the most iconic tunes of the last 6 decades. Bacharach launched his career by penning tunes for the uber-talented vocalist Dionne Warwick, such as Don't Make Me Over and Do You Know the Way to San Jose. He would go on to write iconic song after iconic song. Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head by B.J. Thomas, They Long to Be Close to You by the Carpenters, and many more. His storied career included 6 Grammy wins, an induction into the Songwriters Hall of Fame, and the Gershwin Prize for Popular Song from the Library of Congress. Sadly, Bacharach passed away on February 8th at the age of 94. Few Golden Age hip-hop outfits have put together careers with the kind of longevity that De La Soul have. The trio, composed of Vincent Lamont Pacemaster Mace Mason Jr., Dave Trugoy the Dove Jolicoeur, and Kelvin Posthenoose Mercer, arrived on the scene in 1989. Immediately positioning themselves as an alternative to the hard-edged rappers of the day. Their classic debut album, 3 Feet High and Rising, broke new ground in sampling, and the band's adventurous production and deft lyricism remained consistent throughout 4 separate decades. Unfortunately, that legendary run came to an end with the death of Jolicoeur, who had in the past discussed medical issues related to congestive heart failure on February 12th. In a statement on Instagram, Mercer penned a heartfelt tribute to his friend, which read in part, "Your passing is a great loss not only to us, but also to the entire hip-hop community. You were a true artist who used music to inspire and uplift others, and you will be deeply missed by all who knew you." Although they were founded in 1978, Britpop band Pulp enjoyed next to no commercial success for well over a decade afterwards. Formed by vocalist and lyricist Jarvis Cocker as a teen, the band plowed through members in various styles throughout the 80s, finally settling on a semi-stable lineup that included bassist Steve Mackey. With Mackey aboard, the group cashed in on Britpop's explosion of the mid-90s, having commercial success with a string of hit albums. After Pulp disbanded in the early aughts, Mackey dabbled in photography and continued to work as a songwriter, producer, and remixer for the likes of Florence and the Machine and Arcade Fire. Unfortunately, Mackey passed away on March 2nd from an undisclosed illness. On its official Instagram page, Pulp wrote, "Steve made things happen, in his life and in the band. We'd very much like to think that he's back in those mountains now on the next stage of his adventure." Mackey was 56 years old. Southern Fried Rockers Lynyrd Skynyrd were one of the more successful bands of the 70s, scoring 4 successful studio albums and a live recording before tragedy struck in 1977. That year, just days after the release of their 5th studio album, Street Survivors, the band's chartered plane went down in a wooded area outside Gillsburg, Mississippi. The crash took the lives of lead singer Ronnie Van Sant, guitarist Steve Gaines, and his sister, backup singer Cassie Gaines, forever altering the band's lineup and career trajectory. The band continued in various configurations over the years, but the death of original drummer Bob Burns in 2015 left the band with only one founding member remaining, guitarist Gary Rossington. Sadly, on March 5th, the last surviving original member of Lynyrd Skynyrd passed away from undisclosed causes at the age of 71. In another universe, Jim Gordon is remembered for one thing and one thing only, being one of the most rock-solid, talented drummers to ever sit behind a kit. A former member of the legendary group of studio musicians known as the Wrecking Crew, Gordon's drums have featured on some of the most iconic recordings of rock's early era. A partial list of songs on which he played includes Layla by Derek and the Dominoes, You're So Vain by Carly Simon, and Ricky Don't Lose That Number by Steely Dan, just to name a few. Unfortunately, though, Gordon's incredible work ethic and blinding talent masked a frightening secret. He had schizophrenia, and he had been experiencing auditory hallucinations, including hearing voices in his head since his youth. Speaking with Rolling Stone in 1985, Gordon said, "The voices were chasing me around, making me drive to different places, starving me. I was only allowed one bite of food a meal, and if I disobeyed, the voices would fill me with a rage." Gordon learned to obey those voices without question, and on June 3, 1983, they directed him to do the unthinkable. He attacked and killed his 71-year-old mother at her apartment in Hollywood. He was sentenced to 16 years to life in prison, and while he had been eligible for parole several times, he always declined to attend his hearings. Gordon passed away in prison from natural causes at 77 on March 13. In 2015, legendary R&B and jazz vocalist Bobby Caldwell sat down with Red Bull Music Academy to recall his humble career beginnings in the late 70s. He finally struck gold with hometown label TK Records, leading to his self-titled debut album and its monster hit single, What You Won't Do for Love. With the record in the can, though, Caldwell said there was only one problem. "We did a shoot for the album cover and my hair was down to my shoulders and it was done on the beach. And for them, I guess I got skittish with going to black radio as somebody who was whiter than a loaf of bread. The label's solution was to shoot a new album cover with Caldwell in silhouette, and once fans heard his astonishingly soulful voice, they didn't care what he looked like." Caldwell would go on to release over a dozen studio albums. Sadly, though, on March 14th, Caldwell's wife shared that he passed away at his home in New Jersey. He was 71. Memphis outfit Saliva dropped its self-titled, self-release debut in 1997, but it took mainstream rock radio a few years to catch up to their brand of rap-infused hard rock. The band, which included vocalist Josie Scott and guitarist Wayne Swinney, struck gold, or rather platinum, with their 2001 sophomore effort Every 6 Seconds. That release spawned the hit singles Your Disease and Click Click Boom, earned the band a Grammy nomination, and thrust them into the national spotlight. Their profile was further raised with Scott's collaboration with Nickelback singer Chad Kroeger on the single Hero from 2002's Spider-Man soundtrack, and a steady stream of hit albums followed. The band went through a couple of lineup shuffles in its later years, but their revised lineup continued to record and tour. On March 22nd, the band reported via its Facebook that Swinney had died from a sudden brain hemorrhage. He was only 59. Scottish guitarist and multi-instrumentalist Ian Bairnson would have an enviable music pedigree if he had quit after his run with Pilot, a 70s rock act that scored hits with tunes such as 1974's Magic and 1975's January. Overall, they released 4 albums during the decade and reunited for a 2002 release, which for most musicians would be a full career. But it was actually Bairnson's side gigs that really showed off his blazing talent. He played guitar on Kate Bush's debut album The Kick Inside and its iconic first single Wuthering Heights, and was also a rocksteady member of the Alan Parsons Parsons Project, the progressive rock outfit masterminded by the ace producer and engineer Alan Parsons. Bairnson had suffered from dementia in recent years, and on April 8th, his wife Lola posted on Instagram to inform fans that he had passed away the day before. Referencing the Parsons song Blue Blue Sky, which featured Bairnson on guitar, she wrote, "Ian was the sweetest, kindest, loving husband I could ever have wished for, and I take comfort that he is resting now up there in his very own piece of blue, blue sky." Parsons also posted a lengthy tribute on Facebook, calling Bairnson a genius and a true master of the guitar, who knew every chord in existence despite never learning how to read musical notation. There are wildly successful genre-transcending artists, and then there is Harry Belafonte, whose title King of Calypso barely scratches the surface of his legendary career. Sure, the tag certainly fits. His 1956 album Calypso single-handedly popularized the genre, spending an unbelievable 31 weeks atop the Billboard chart and becoming the first album in history by a solo artist to sell 1 million copies. But Belafonte was a man of many talents and interests. He is an EGOT winner who enjoyed a decade-spanning career not only as a recording artist, but on the stage, screen, and television. He is a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, the mastermind behind the famous charity single We Are the World, and the producer of the 1984 feature film Beat Street, which helped introduce the world at large to hip-hop. He was also a tireless humanitarian and activist. On April 25th, his celebrated life came to an end at the age of 96. In his 2011 memoir My Song, Belafonte summed up his own legacy and philosophy with characteristic eloquence. "Artists are truly empowered, as they were generations before, with the gift to make a difference. I expect that the rest of my life will be spent in this pursuit." As former vice presidential spokesperson Simone Sanders Townsend told MSNBC,
"Long live Mr. Belafonte's legacy."
Classic rockers Bachman Turner Overdrive had already suffered a crushing blow when drummer Robbie Bachman passed away in January, and on April 28th they endured yet another one when his brother, guitarist Tim Bachman, died at the age of 71. Tim Bachman was only 19 when his brother Randy Bachman, formerly of the band The Guess Who, enlisted his siblings to join him in his new project, Bachman Turner Overdrive. Tim played guitar on the group's first 2 albums before quitting, but returned in the 80s for a reunion album and tour. Tim Bachman passed away after a battle with cancer, and the news of his passing was broken on Facebook by his son Ryder, who posted, "Grateful I got to spend some time with him at the end. Grab your loved ones and hug them close. You never know how long you have." Canadian singer and songwriter Gordon Lightfoot was one of the most distinctive voices of his generation. With his earthly unique vocal timbre and penchant for insightful personal lyricism, Lightfoot became one of the premier solo recording artists of the 70s. He scored top 10 hits with the intimate classic tunes Sundown, If You Could Read My Mind, and the unlikely smash The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, an epic 14-verse recounting of one of the most famous maritime disasters of the decade. This song spent a whopping 21 weeks on the Billboard chart, peaking at number 2. Lightfoot continued to perform up until his final days, and on April 11th, he was forced to cancel a planned US and Canadian tour. Less than a month later, on May 1st, Lightfoot died in a Toronto hospital at the age of 84. In a tweet, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau expressed the sentiments of his countrymen and all of Lightfoot's loyal fans, writing, "We have lost one of our greatest singer-songwriters. Gordon Lightfoot captured our country's spirit in his music, and in doing so, he helped shape Canada's soundscape. May his music continue to inspire future generations, and may his legacy live on forever." And the Canadian Parliament also paid tribute to the national icon.
Gordon Lightfoot lives in our blood. He's the soundtrack to some of the greatest and most beautiful memories.
When they arrived with their self-titled debut album in 1984, the Smiths immediately positioned themselves as a rebuttal to the UK's then-current domination by synth-driven bands. Powered by the layered, dense guitar work of Johnny Marr and the disaffected crooning of lead singer Morrissey, the Smiths served as a bridge between new wave and the guitar work that would come to define British pop in the 90s. And while the band's career was relatively short, comprised of 5 albums only over 4 years, their influence has been felt ever since. Key to their musical secret sauce was the melodic driving bass work of Andy Rourke, who continued to work with Morrissey after the band's dissolution. Rourke also played in the supergroup Freebase and recorded with other legends like Sinead O'Connor and the Pretenders. Unfortunately, though, Rourke's life and career came to a premature end on May 19th when he lost his battle with pancreatic cancer at the age of 59. Marr announced his passing on Twitter, writing, "Andy will be remembered as a kind and beautiful soul by those who knew him, and as a supremely gifted musician by music fans." In a statement on his website, Morrissey also paid tribute to his bandmate, writing, "He didn't ever know his own power, and nothing that he played had been played by someone else. I suppose at the end of it all, we hope to feel that we were valued. Andy need not worry about that." The Smiths drummer Mike Joyce echoed the sentiments when he spoke to the BBC, saying,
"I don't think Andy realized just how good a bass player he was.
One of rock's all-time great vocalists, Tina Turner was also the embodiment of perseverance. As a duo with her husband Ike Turner, she became legendary for her vocals on tunes like River Deep, Mountain High, and the Outfit's cover of Creedence Clearwater Revival's Proud Mary. But as their fame grew, the couple was torn apart by Ike's violent, brutal behavior. After breaking from Ike in 1976, Tina Turner embarked on a solo career later in that decade, one that appeared to peter out as the 80s dawned, but appearances can be deceiving. In 1984, Turner released Private Dancer, an outright smash that would sell 20 million copies worldwide, win 3 Grammy Awards, and generate timeless classics with tunes like What's Love Got to Do With It. Turner continued recording throughout the 80s and 90s, scoring hit albums with 1986's Break Every Rule and 1993's What's Love Got to Do With It, the latter being the soundtrack album to the biopic of the same name starring Angela Bassett. On May 24th, at the age of 83, Turner passed away from natural causes at her home in Switzerland. In announcing her passing in a statement, Turner's publicist wrote, "With her, the world loses a music legend and a role model." As Turner told Oprah Winfrey,
"My legacy is that I stayed on chorus from the beginning to the end because I believed in something inside of me.